Ukraine's president has paid another personal visit to a European ally to rally support ahead of Friday's talks between US President Donald Trump and Russia's Vladimir Putin. Volodymyr Zelenskyy hasn't been invited to those discussions, but today he met British Prime Minister Keir Starmer in London. On Wednesday, the Ukrainian president was in Berlin, where he joined a video conference with Trump. During that call, Ukraine's allies told the US president that Europe would never accept the ceding of Ukrainian territory to Russia. Let's get more on this from Ben Hall. He's Europe editor of the Financial Times and joins us now from London. Ben, welcome. What would you say has been the concrete outcome of this meeting between Keir Starmer and Volodymyr Zelenskyy?
Well, this was a very brief meeting between the two leaders at number 10 Downing Street. There was no press conference afterwards, and as yet, no statement from either leader. So in that sense, it's probably not that significant. But I think it's important to see this as part of a very concerted, multi-pronged effort by the Ukrainians and their European allies to form a united front about the sort of fundamental conditions that they believe in for these any peace talks between Ukraine and Russia, and ahead of the meeting between Trump and Putin in Alaska. This is about educating the Americans as to the realities on the ground and the constraints on the Ukrainian leader, and also about, I think, giving some room to Zelenskyy to be able to push back if he's presented with an unacceptable deal.
About this pushback and the reality on the ground, Keir Starmer has said that the UK is ready to, quote, increase pressure on Russia if needed. And here I'm talking about reality. How will this increased pressure on Russia work? How will this be implemented?
Well, I think first and foremost, what Keir Starmer wants and what the other European leaders want is for America to be prepared to put greater pressure on Russia. That might mean sanctions or tariffs on Russian goods, but it might also mean more American military aid to Ukraine. It might be paid for by the Europeans, but something that gives a military advantage to Ukraine is all part of the pressure campaign. And of course, one should add potentially pressure on third countries that are still importing large amounts of Russian goods, particularly Russian oil. That's where America has real influence. The Europeans, including the Brits, can still do more in tightening sanctions. That is certainly true. And they still have over $200 billion of Russian frozen assets. So they do have leverage. But this is really about trying to galvanize Donald Trump into putting more pressure on Russia if Vladimir Putin refuses to play ball and agree to a ceasefire and steps to end the war.
What if Donald Trump refuses to play ball? And I ask this because Keir Starmer also is talking about any ceasefire deal requiring security guarantees. Now, any security guarantee, Keir Starmer has also talked about, requires US support. So what if the US president refuses to play ball? We have nothing then?
Well, so far he has refused to play ball, although yesterday European leaders came away with the firm belief that Trump has shifted his position now, and that he recognizes that European security guarantees will only be effective if the Americans play some sort of role. We don't know what that is. He was not very specific, reportedly, in the talks yesterday, but one could surmise that it means America providing intelligence and reconnaissance support for a European mission, and also monitoring of the front lines and of Russian military maneuvers to make sure there are no ceasefire violations. So crucially, some American role, which is what a lot of European governments, including the British government, have been holding out for. There's a lot of nervousness about getting more involved in Ukraine's war without an ultimate American backstop. And Trump seems to have moved a little bit in that direction. But again, the details are still very unclear.
In talking about, the movement from Donald Trump, he talked about, quote, very severe consequences for Russia if Vladimir Putin doesn't agree to stop the war after the Alaska meeting. With that kind of an assurance in play, you would think that the Europeans, the UK and the Ukrainians should be rest assured, but they aren't going into the Alaska meeting, are they?
No, they're not at all, because they're worried that ultimately Vladimir Putin will sway Donald Trump, who seems to have a strangely deferential attitude towards the Russian leader. Putin is a very wily negotiator. He knows that Trump is desperate for a deal, and he will probably try and string out these talks, not say no, but not say yes either. And probably try and string Donald Trump along, or even persuade him to accept some sort of deal which is highly unacceptable to the to the Ukrainians, and also to Europeans who fear it will undermine their own security. So there is that underlying fear still about what may happen in Alaska, and whatever reassurance they will have taken from the conversations on Wednesday, they all know that everything is still to play for in Alaska on Friday.
We'll leave it there for the moment. Ben Hall, Europe editor of the Financial Times. Thanks so much.